Chapter 1694. Looking at the fire not far away that was still burning because of the kerosene, everyone didn't know what to feel. Tens of millions of heroes were burned to the ground just like that. Such a scene truly caused one to have no choice but to look up to the sky and sigh endlessly. In the sky, in the demonic fog, the Dharma Supreme stood with his hands behind his back. For the first time, his body exuded a strong fighting spirit and endless murderous aura. "Let's fight." Chu Yang looked at him with an unusually complicated expression. He said in a low voice, "Dharma Supreme, do we really have to do this?" The Dharma Supreme chuckled, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. "Don't think that my act of exterminating the world is really to earn some great merit. I'm doing good, right? Ha ha ha. Chu Yang, let me tell you today, either you die or I die. Either you rule the world, or I poison the world." Chu Yang took a deep breath and shouted, "All right. Since that's the case, let's fight to the death." The Calamity sword flashed, and an extremely strong and awe-inspiring sword intent appeared in the air. A blazing white sword light spanned hundreds of feet, shining brightly. Gu Duxing slowly drew out the black dragon sword and held it horizontally across his chest. Dong Wuxiang raised his black saber lightly, the blade facing outwards, shining brightly. Mo Tianji flipped his wrist, and a purple jade flute suddenly appeared. Mo Qingwu's red sleeves fluttered, and the saber light of the Qingwu dream saber was like a dream. Ao Xian let out a long roar, and his body suddenly spread out, turning into a golden dragon that was 400 to 500 feet long. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws, soaring into the air. Rui Butong let out a sigh, and a brilliant light bloomed in the air. A beautiful seven-colored phoenix stood in the air. Jimo's hand slowly pressed on the hilt of his sword. Luo Kadi stood on his left and right, their swords already buzzing in their hands. Xie Danxiong took a step back. His fair fingers flashed, and a flower suddenly appeared on it. Viburnum flower. On his fingertips it whirled, reflecting a dazzling and mysterious color. Chu Yang gave the order, and the 10 people on his side spread out with a swoosh. They formed a big circle, facing each other, but also forming an encirclement. Ambush from all sides. One person in charge. And the person in charge, of course it was Chu Yang. There was no arrangement, but the position that everyone occupied was the most suitable place for them. The main attacker was Chu Yang. The 3 main attackers were Gu Duxing, Dong Wuxiang, and Rui Butong. The 3 assistants were Gmo Luo Kadi, Ao Xieyun. The person at the back was Mo Qingwu. The person at the center was Mo Tianji. The one who was wandering outside was Xie Danxiong, the viburnum flower. There was an invisible and inextricable connection between everyone and any other person. If one person moved, all 10 of them would move, and one person would receive the force. Collective relief. Such a formation, even in the eyes of the Dharma Supreme, was flawless. Once the formation was formed, an overwhelming pressure rushed toward the Dharma Supreme. Clouds and mist swirled wildly, and black gas wreaked havoc everywhere. Today's battle will put an end to the past. The Dharma Supreme laughed maniacally, his voice shaking the sky. Tribulation sword master. Calamity sword. Suddenly his entire body shook. His black robe fluttered in the wind, and then floated in the air. His long hair suddenly flew up and fluttered in the air. The Dharma Supreme raised his head abruptly. His pitch-black eyes pierced through the air, and landed on the 10 of them. A powerful aura, as if it could destroy the world, rose. Driven by his aura, even though Chu Yang and the rest had improved their cultivation, they still could not help but feel their clothes fluttering behind them. Everyone felt as if they were facing a level 12 storm. Their mouths and noses froze for a moment. In the eyes of Chu Yang and the others, the current Dharma Supreme was more like a demon god that had suddenly emerged from the netherland. With boundless darkness, boundless murderous aura, an unparalleled terrifying power, he had arrived in a domineering manner. This was a strange battle that surpassed the limits, and even surpassed everything that was known. Whether it was the Dharma Supreme or Chu Yang's group of people, everyone had already surpassed the limits of the heavenly layer. However, they knew nothing about their current level, and the levels that they would reach in the future. It was the same for each other. No one knew what level they were at now. They also did not know what level the other party was at. However, the intuition of a martial artist could clearly sense that the other party was very powerful. Chu Yang could even feel that even though they had gone through such a huge upgrade, they were still slightly inferior to the Dharma Supreme, who had absorbed the entire extraterrestrial demon. This was not too unexpected. Previously, the Sword Spirit had already predicted that the extraterrestrial demon was a super expert who had reached the heavenly layer. Even though the Dharma Supreme might not reach the peak of the extraterrestrial demon's strength after absorbing all of it, it would not be too far off. Even though the effects of the Heaven-Earth Mystery Yellow Fruit were amazing, by the time Chu Yang and the rest consumed it, most of its effects had already dissipated. Moreover, it was divided among the 14 of them. Even though the 14 of them had improved greatly and broken through the limits of the heavenly layer, their actual progress would probably stop at the earth layer. Therefore, Chu Yang felt that there was still a gap between him and the Dharma Supreme. However, Chu Yang was not afraid of this. At the moment when the group of brothers took out their weapons at the same time, the 10 of them all rose in their hearts. The same confidence rose in them. We will definitely win this battle. This was an extremely subtle and mystical feeling. So what if your demonic prowess is overwhelming? So what if your demonic prowess is unparalleled? Because I have my brothers by my side. My everything is by my side. Facing the Dharma Supreme's overwhelming and terrifying pressure, Chu Yang suddenly felt a sense of heroism. He looked up to the sky and shouted, "One ray of cold light pierces 10,000 feet." This sentence was not only an exhalation, but also a command to attack. The 10 of them moved together. The Calamity Sword shone brightly. Suddenly, 10,000 rays of cold light illuminated the sky. It was as if cold stars had suddenly appeared in the dark night sky. Although they couldn't completely disperse the darkness, they couldn't block out the specks of starlight, even though it was pitch black. Chu Yang leaped up with his sword and took the lead to attack. Gu Duxing's gaze was as sharp as a sword. His body stood straight, and the next moment, he turned into a sword light that left his hand. Sword of Solitude, Unruffled Heart. The two peerless sword experts attacked with all their might. The Dharma Supreme understood the Calamity Sword technique the most. To him, this type of sword technique was the greatest threat, but also the least. Seeing Chu Yang attack, he shouted, "Good move." A black shadow flashed and was about to attack. Previously, when he faced the Calamity Sword technique, he still had to carefully choose the right time and set up the corresponding targeted strategy. But now the Dharma Supreme, whose strength was much higher, did not need to worry so much. The Dharma Supreme was confident that even if his targeted counterattack could not defeat Chu Yang's attack, it could at least gain the upper hand and dominate the battle. However, there was a change because Gu Duxing had also arrived at the right time. The Dharma Supreme frowned. He could be said to understand all the changes of the Calamity Sword technique. But the moment Gu Duxing attacked, he actually lost control of the Calamity Sword technique, causing the entire battle to become confusing. The power of the Calamity Sword technique, with the cooperation of the Calamity Brothers, actually increased by several times. Gu Duxing's attack behind him was obviously not the Calamity Sword technique, but it gave the Dharma Supreme a real feeling of what harm is there in slaughtering the entire world. This unusually real feeling was as if there were two masters of the Calamity Sword attacking him at the same time, one from the front and one from the back. They were both so sharp and so powerful, and this strange feeling had never appeared before, even when his brothers were still together. This unexpected change made the Dharma Supreme feel as if he could no longer control the entire battle. Strange. Demonic fog gushed out of the Dharma Supreme's body. His left hand pushed horizontally, and his right hand struck back. The whole sky suddenly exploded, and the mountains and rivers shook at the same time. The Dharma Supreme's two hands were facing Chu Yang's Calamity Sword and Gu Duxing's Black Dragon Sword. However, his left hand was pushing horizontally, and actually found the edge of the Calamity Sword in an impossible situation, and pushed along it. The sharpness of the Calamity Sword was something that even the Dharma Supreme did not dare to recklessly try. Chu Yang suddenly felt an extremely uncomfortable feeling of defeat. The sword momentum that should have been completed in one go suddenly had a feeling that he had found the wrong direction, and that his hand had slipped. He couldn't help but rush towards the other side along with his sword. On the other side, the Dharma Supreme's right hand also collided fiercely with the tip of Gu Duxing's Black Dragon sword. Other than the Calamity sword, the Dharma Supreme no longer cared about any other divine weapons, even if it was a rare divine sword controlled by an expert at the pinnacle of the sword. Fist and sword collided. Both of their bodies shook violently at the same time. Both of them were dressed in black robes, and at this moment, they actually bulged backwards at the same time. The Dharma Supreme's long hair suddenly floated up, and black lightning suddenly appeared in his eyes, flashing away. That was a strong sense of shock. As for Gu Duxing, it was as if he was struck by lightning. His right hand that was holding the sword almost lost all feeling, and his body unconsciously leaned back slightly. Then he forcibly stopped himself, but still involuntarily floated back 3 steps, a dark red color flashing across his face. Gu Duxing's strength had undoubtedly improved a lot, but there was still a considerable gap between him and the Dharma Supreme now. Watch my saber. Dong Wuxiang's black saber was already coming down, the saber light awe-inspiring and domineering beyond compare. The Dharma Supreme snorted coldly, still not retreating, and punched fiercely on the saber edge. With a sound, Dong Wuxiang's majestic body also trembled a little, and the black saber rebounded, almost smashing the back of the saber on Dong Wuxiang's own forehead. Dong Wuxiang roared indignantly, and exerted strength again, slashing down with all his might. Swoosh, 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 3 consecutive saber attacks came. The Dharma Supreme laughed. Satisfying. He still didn't dodge, and punched 3 times consecutively, all landing on the saber edge. The sharp and heavy black saber slashed on the surface of his fist, but only a faint white line appeared, and then disappeared. Dong Wuxiang roared loudly, and was sent flying into the sky by the unusually strong force of the fist. Chapter 1695. The viburnum flower came at an incredible speed, and its attack range was even wider. The Dharma Supreme tilted his body, and his entire body abruptly straightened, colliding head-on with Mo Tianji's purple jade flute, and kicking the viburnum flower that was still blooming behind him. Under Xie Danqiong's incredulous gaze, the viburnum flower actually flew back with a swoosh. Xie Danqiong knew very well that under this attack of his, the viburnum flower had rotated with all kinds of force and angles, a total of 72,000 times. Under such complicated changes, the Dharma Supreme was actually able to accurately kick the core of the flower. That was not all. What was even more shocking was that although the viburnum flower that was kicked back had less changes, the number of spins had increased to 80,000 times. Behind him, Mo Tianji, who seemed to be the Dharma Supreme's vital point, also staggered backward. Mo Tianji's purple jade flute had just hit the back of the Dharma Supreme's head, but the landing point was poles apart from Mo Tianji's initial landing point. Mo Tianji's initial target was the Dharma Supreme's back precisely, so that he could coordinate with Xie Danqiong's viburnum flower attack, completely locking onto the Dharma Supreme from the front and back. Unexpectedly, the Dharma Supreme's reaction speed was godly, and the way he reacted was even more surprising. Not only did he easily break through Xie Danqiong's viburnum flower, he even head-on collided with Mo Tianji's purple jade flute. In this collision, Mo Tianji only felt that his purple jade flute was completely ineffective. Immediately after, he felt an abundant and irresistible force counterattack, and immediately retreated. Xie and Mo had just retreated when Aoxian activated his unique dragon-shaped force. His entire person seemed to have transformed into a huge dragon that was roaming the skies. The huge dragon body suddenly rolled towards the Dharma Supreme. Taking advantage of the fact that the Dharma Supreme's body was still lying flat, Aoxian wrapped around the Dharma Supreme like a huge snake. 2 hands viciously grabbed at the Dharma Supreme's eyes that were filled with black gas. The Dharma Supreme's body shook and dense demonic aura suddenly erupted. The huge dragon instantly vanished into thin air. Aoxian let out a cry and retreated in a flash. At this moment, Rui Butong flapped his wings and swooped down. His 2 sharp phoenix claws had already collided with the Dharma Supreme's hands. His sharp beak fiercely pecked, and at the same time, a blazing white nirvana flame violently spewed out. The Dharma Supreme exerted strength in his hands and borrowed the force to move. His entire body slid out from below like a fish. With a backhand, his palm landed squarely on Rui Budong's phoenix butt. Rui Butong let out a strange shriek and rushed out like a soaring cloud. Ao Xian, who had just gotten up, was knocked to the ground. Ao Xian shouted, "What the fuck, my butt?" Scram! Ao Xian kicked him away in annoyance. The Dharma Supreme slid backward, facing the combined attack of GMO and Luo Kadi, man and sword as one. It was a pity that their cultivation levels were still insufficient. The Dharma Supreme did not dodge or evade. His left hand went up against GMO, and his right hand went up against Luo Kadi. Once again he chose to fight head-on. In addition, he even had the time to kick out with his leg, easily deflecting Mo Qingwu's dreaming of a gentle dance saber. However, right in front of him, Chu Yang flashed over with his sword like a bolt of lightning. The Dharma Supreme's calm expression instantly turned solemn, dealing with GMO and Luo Kadi's attacks and deflecting Xiao Wu's saber at the same time. He lost his balance and flipped over in an almost impossible position. With a spin, he broke through Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang's saber and sword attacks from both sides again. With a swipe of his finger, a black long sword finally appeared in his hand, swaying elegantly like a folding fan. It faced Chu Yang's Calamity Sword head-on. This sword of Chu Yang's was the combination of all four sword techniques from the sword point into one. It was as powerful as thunder, unparalleled in its sharpness. The Dharma Supreme had just stood up when the sword light of the four combined techniques was already in front of him. With a few cracking sounds, the front half of the Dharma Supreme's black long sword broke instantly, and then completely shattered. However, the Dharma Supreme did not seem to be surprised at all. He laughed loudly, as expected of the Calamity Sword. An old friend I haven't seen in a long time, the greatest help in the past, and the most deadly enemy in the present. The remaining half of the sword was still resisting the attacks of the Calamity Sword. The half of the sword continued to shatter, and with the recoil, the Dharma Supreme flew backward violently. Faced with this move of Chu Yang's, the Dharma Supreme, who had just experienced the consecutive attacks of the Calamity Sword, could only choose to avoid it temporarily. With a long whistle, Gu Duxing's sword, Dong Wushang's saber, Xie Danqiong's viburnum flower, and Mo Tianji's purple jade flute once again struck the Dharma Supreme's body from four directions. However, even though they had already struck the Dharma Supreme's body, the four weapons seemed to have been defeated. There were only four soft sounds and no other gains. As the Dharma Supreme attacked and retreated rapidly, the four of them even felt an unusually strong recoil force. They could not stabilize their bodies, and were sent flying in all directions together with their weapons. The Dharma Supreme could not help but let out a muffled groan. The strange black fog around him instantly exploded, and his body suddenly disappeared. Then, with a flash, he reappeared in another direction far away from the battlefield. He shouted, "Good sword, is it Gu Duxing's sword?" Gu Duxing's face was no longer as rosy as before due to the recoil. Hearing this, he asked in surprise, "What's wrong?" The Dharma Supreme stared at him coldly. With a flip of his hand, his sleeves lifted up with a swoosh, revealing his arm. On his forearm a wound slowly widened. Black blood flowed out from the wound, and dripped down along the Dharma Supreme's arm, turning into a rising demonic fog. It turned out that the joint attack of the four earlier was not completely fruitless. The Dharma Supreme was actually. He had also suffered some minor injuries. "Little Gu, I didn't expect your sword to already have a sword soul." The Dharma Supreme's eyes were somewhat surprised. He said, "Although the sword soul is still weak and has not even fully awakened, but since it exists it can hurt me. Gu Duxing, you are very impressive. I have underestimated you previously." Gu Duxing was shocked and then overjoyed. Previously, Chu Yang had already shared the matter of the weapon soul with his brothers. Unfortunately, their martial arts were not strong enough, and the degree of compatibility and communication with them was also far from enough. Their respective weapons were still far from the level of spiritual communication. Although they all had a certain concept of the weapon soul, no one could truly feel what a weapon soul was. However, Gu Duxing's Black Dragon sword was an exception. Ever since Gu Duxing made his debut, he only had this sword with him. It could be said that the existence closest to Gu Duxing was neither the King of Hell nor Sister Xiao Miao, but this Black Dragon sword. It had accompanied Gu Duxing all the way to his improvement and growth. In this period of time, the Black Dragon sword had been constantly modified by Chu Yang and nourished by Gu Duxing's spirit. It had actually started to develop the consciousness of a sword soul. Chu Yang said solemnly, "Dharma Supreme, you are indeed impressive. The 10 of us have joined forces to attack you, and we have already gone all out without holding back. Yet you only suffered such a minor injury. Just based on your cultivation alone, I, Chu Yang, have to admit that I am impressed." Hearing this, Gu Duxing, Dong Wuxiang and the rest were all shocked. That's right. The Tribulation Sword Master and Tribulations. The 10 of them attacked together, as if they were of one mind. The Dharma Supreme took almost all of the attacks head-on, yet he only suffered such a minor injury. Moreover, this was after the 10 of them had greatly improved their cultivation. They had already far surpassed the limits of the heavenly layer, and were able to break through the void. How strong was the Dharma Supreme's strength? The Dharma Supreme smiled and stood with his hands behind his back. Although the Khanate heavenly demon is already damaged, his strength was definitely very strong when he was in the imperial court. However, what I devoured was his spirit. Although his spirit was greatly damaged, it was still much stronger than his physical body. After digesting all of it, I now have almost 30% of his strength when he was at his peak. Although your cultivations have greatly increased compared to before, which is already an unimaginable progress, you are still lacking when it comes to killing me. Chu Yang snorted coldly and said, "Lacking? That may not be the case." The Dharma Supreme laughed loudly. The black fog suddenly spread. Suddenly, his body shook and 10 Dharma Supremes appeared at the same time. They attacked the 10 of them at the same time in the thick fog. Although he was alone, he actually chose to split himself and attack first by dividing his strength. "Kill!" Chu Yang yelled. The people below watched as the black fog in the sky slowly rose and changed its shape. At first, it filled the sky, but after it rose, it turned into a huge black cloud in the sky. Everyone's mood was extremely solemn. Occasionally, there would be a loud noise or a roar from inside. The ground, which was a distance away, would tremble uniformly. To be able to cause such signs, how powerful was the source? Everyone's hearts were filled with shock. If this unprecedented battle of the century happened on flat ground, no one would be able to survive within a radius of thousands of miles. The only result would be that everyone would be shaken to death. Ning Tianya looked at the sky in a daze and said, "Such a battle appearing in the heavens continent. It really makes one." He shook his head and didn't continue. But behind him, a tender voice let out a long sigh and continued for him. "It really makes one lose confidence." Supreme martial artist Ning's face turned red instantly. A little boy's head popped out from behind him. His eyes were sparkling as he looked at the people in front of him. He was simply beautiful to the extreme, and also extremely cute to the extreme. She had a soft and tender face, pitch black hair, and lips that were as red as ripe cherries. She blinked her eyes, and her eyelids were still not fully formed. They were pink and tender, and in an instant, everyone present was overwhelmed by her cuteness. He was really too adorable. How could there be such an adorable little boy in the world? Chu Luo and Feng Yuro's eyes lit up at the same time. "Wow!" Chu Luo screamed, "So cute!" Feng Yuro rushed up and asked anxiously, "Who is this? He's really cute." She suddenly realized, "Ning Tianya, this isn't your son, right? You've been avoiding us for such a long time. So you've been avoiding giving birth to him? You actually gave birth to such an adorable child. I've really underestimated you. Let's see how she can be my elder sister-in-law." It was a pity that she was not Sister Z's child. Elder Sister Z would be the eldest, and this little one's mother would be the second. Mo Qing Wu would at most be the third. Maybe she would even be the fourth. Below, because of the sudden appearance of this little fellow, everyone was discussing fervently. The atmosphere was very lively in an instant, almost neglecting the battle of the century that was in full swing in the sky. It was just that everyone seemed to have neglected a very important point. How could this little fellow, who was only 2 or 3 years old, endure such a strong stench of blood? Previously, Ning Tianya was carrying the little fellow on his back as he fought with Ping Xiaoyan in the high-intensity battle atmosphere formed by 2 second-grade supreme martial artists. Even an ordinary 8th-grade supreme martial artist wouldn't be able to interfere, right? Above, the YJNG of the battle gradually reached a critical juncture. After a series of battles, everyone was injured, including the Dharma Supreme. Right now his body was also riddled with injuries. This wise man, whose name shook the heavens in the past, didn't use any scheming at all in this battle. He only relied on his instincts to meet everyone's attacks head-on. Even the head-on clashes with the Calamity Sword were no exception. This kind of battle style was what Dong Wuxiang was best at. But the Dharma Supreme was Diwu Chochang, the former think tank of the Calamity Sword. Using such a barbaric battle style should have been something he disdained the most. But now it was actually happening. This result was really incomprehensible. Just like that, the continuous tough battles caused everyone to expend a lot of energy. After 3 hours of battle, even Mo Qinggu had to fight the Dharma Supreme fiercely for more than 10 times. As for Chu Yang, Gu Duxing, Dong Wuxiang and the rest, they fought the Dharma Supreme without regard for their own lives countless times. Especially Chu Yang. The Dharma Supreme seemed to have a special affection for him. Most of the fights were on the Calamity Sword. Chu Yang gritted his teeth and held on bitterly, but the newly increased cultivation in his body was rapidly fusing completely with his body. Then, it condensed. After every fight with Chu Yang, there would always be a strange look in the depths of the Dharma Supreme's eyes. Every time he clashed with the Tribulation Sword, the Dharma Supreme's body would be riddled with scars. Although the scars weren't very big, scars were still scars. However, there was still an extremely strange and complicated look in the depths of his eyes. Even his heart was like a huge wave that surged to the heavens, surging violently. Endless sadness and nostalgia, countless unforgettable memories, surged into his heart at this moment. Boss, I fought with the Calamity Sword again. Back then, how many times did we fight? If I have younger brothers and sisters in the future, I will take good care of them and play with them. The little fellow smiled innocently. I really look forward to it. The brothers immediately glared at each other. This was definitely a threat. This little bastard. Everyone's face darkened, and they were dumbfounded. I'm at a loss of what to do. Holy crap, big brother Chu Yang. What kind of child did you give birth to? Help ah. We didn't give you a greeting gift. And you want to torment our child? Damn it. Looking at the commotion over there, Chu Yang's eyes followed the little figure. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. Yes, how many battles and difficulties had he gone through? How many storms, how many seasons had he gone through? Through wind, frost, rain, and snow. He fought against torrents and went through hardships. His infatuation didn't change. Even a young man with lofty aspirations was troubled. Cough, cough, cough. From having nothing in the lower 3 heavens and being weak, all the way until now when he had transcended beyond the limits of the heavenly layer. With a stomp of his feet, the martial world would tremble, and with a cough, mountains and rivers would bow down. How much had he sacrificed? How much had he gone through? How many times had he narrowly escaped death? How many times had he circled in front of the king of hell's palace? How many times had he traveled to hell? Finally, today, he had reached the pinnacle. He held the heavens in his hands. The world was in his hands, and heaven and earth trembled because of him. But was all this worth it? At this moment, Chu Yang only felt that there wasn't much joy in his heart. Then he had a feeling. Actually, standing at the pinnacle and standing on flat ground were essentially the same. They were both standing on the ground. Only with one's feet on the ground would one's heart be the most stable. It's just that there are always some differences between high and low. Chu Yang smiled bitterly in his heart. The Moon Breeze couple had already walked over. Sword Master Chu. Yes, seniors. Chu Yang sorted out his thoughts. What's the matter? Yu Lingxue smiled bitterly and said, now that the Dharma Supreme is dead, and the law enforcement force is only in name now, All the core forces have been wiped out, and the entire heavenly layer is practically a wasteland. As for what to do in the future, we still need everyone to discuss and come up with an idea. Speaking of this, Chu Yang also had a headache. After scratching his head for a long time, he finally squeezed out a sentence. This matter, it's not very appropriate to talk about it here. After all, it involves quite a lot of places. Let's go back and sit down. Let's talk about it slowly. Both Mo Tianji and Diwu Qingru must be present, and then some of the remaining forces on this continent must also be informed. In short, Sai, although this mess is very difficult to clean up, it can always be cleaned up slowly. He actually wanted to say, I'm leaving anyway, that's your business. But he didn't dare to say it out loud. If he said it out loud, he would probably be beaten up by the crowd. The Moon Breeze couple was actually extremely conflicted about this as well. They both nodded and then sighed. Looking at the mountain of corpses over there, Chu Yang also had a headache. He dragged Rui Butong over. How long are you going to burn them like this? Quickly give me the Nirvana flame. Quickly get it over with. Rui Butong sat down on the ground almost crying. Boss, do you think the Nirvana flame is as simple as striking a flint? You said it so easily and happily. Chu Yang narrowed his eyes. What? Do you have other ideas? Rui Butong surrendered with a sullen face. I'll go, okay. Damn it. I was just extorted and ordered around. Why am I always so unlucky? At this moment, the capital city could be said to be in ruins, full of devastation. Although there was no battle in the city, the strong aftershocks of this final battle had also destroyed countless houses. There were almost no intact houses in the entire city. The Yi clan courtyard, the grandest residence in the capital city in the past, was now dead silent, with corpses everywhere. This was the work of the law enforcement officers who had carried out the Dharma Supreme's sneak attack on the women and children of the Yi clan. At this moment, corpses were everywhere, fresh blood flowing, green flies flying here and there. When Chu Yang and the others saw this scene, they all felt a sense of desolation in their hearts. The world had changed so many times. Just a few months ago, the Yi clan was still the most dazzling clan on this continent. Now the clan had been destroyed, and there were almost no descendants of the Yi clan left in the world. Not to mention a long time ago. Even if this was said a month ago, who would believe it? He ordered the remaining warriors of the Ling clan to open all the Yi clan storehouses and take their treasures to help the people in the city. Now, only the Ling clan still had some people left. The other clans were basically all dead. Looking at the Yi clan's incomparably huge storehouse, Chu Luer was deeply moved. Just a year ago, she was still wantonly plundering here. Now there was not a single person left in this clan. The world sighed, and the world turned into mulberry fields. As for the items in the Yi clan's storehouse, other than a few essential elixirs, Chu Yang did not touch any of the other treasures. The sound of clothes fluttering could be heard. Diwu Qingru came from afar, his face full of pain and sorrow. There was also a faint sense of helplessness. What's the matter? I just received the latest news. Forever young and beautiful, with a lonely love that lasts forever. Moreover, the reason why I don't go up is that I want to coldly look at the way of reincarnation in the lower three heavens. There's a path in the heavenly imperial court. There may not be no path in the human world. There may not be only one path for a cultivator to move forward. Chu Yang slowly digested Ning Tianya's last sentence. He suddenly felt that he had benefited immensely. There may not be no path in the human world. There may not be only one path for a cultivator to move forward. Little, what do you want to discuss with me? Chu Yang turned his hand and patted the little buttocks of his son who was riding on his neck. He only felt that the buttocks were tender and nice to the touch. So, he couldn't help but pat them again. I came here to ask you, father. I heard that your cultivation has reached the standard of the void-breaking realm, and you're about to leave this world. If you leave, what will happen to my mother? The little guy was riding on Chu Yang's neck. His tender little legs were swinging in front of Chu Yang's chest. However, the words that came out of his mouth were like that of an adult. The moment he heard this, Chu Yang's head started to hurt. I've discussed this matter with your mother. I also have a secret method that can help your mother quickly improve her cultivation, and follow me. However, you still need a long time to grow up. Your mother is shouldering the fate of Iron Cloud Nation and the heavy responsibility of the people. She can't bear to leave you, little bastard. She's unwilling to leave. Chu Yang knew that his son was mischievous and had his own opinions. Moreover, his opinions were unique and not inferior to that of an adult. Therefore, he didn't really treat this little guy as an insensible child. Thinking of Tai Butian's determination, Chu Yang really had a headache. In Chu Yang's opinion, his woman should follow him without hesitation. What was the point of living in two different places, separated by heaven and earth? However, Tai Butian's choice was indeed to stay without hesitation. The reality was actually so cruel and melodramatic, and super speechless to the point of driving one crazy. I have an idea, but I need your cooperation. The little guy chuckled and leaned close to Chu Yang's ear. Wonderful. Chu Yang was beaming with joy. He turned around and saw Ning Tianya. Rolling his eyes, he said to Ning Tianya, Elder Ning, I may have to trouble you to make this trip. Ning Tianya said warily, What for? You're not up to something again, are you? Elder Ning, you don't have to be so guarded against me, right? I just want to ask you to go to the lower three heavens and bring this little one's mother up. Firstly, let her know where her son is and be at ease. Secondly, let her acknowledge her ancestors. Thirdly, we have to discuss future matters again, said Chu Yang. Chu Yang knew very well that he couldn't go. If he went, there would be no real meaning in staying in the lower three heavens. Tai Butian might still be reluctant to come to the upper three heavens. It would be best to let Ning Tianya bring her up directly and settle everything here. With her son here, with Tai Butian's love for her child, there was no way she wouldn't come. Yes, her son is that little girl's lifeline. Ning Tianya said cheerfully. I see. There's no time to lose. I'll leave right away. Your family should indeed be reunited for a few days. In that case, I'll have to trouble you, Elder Ning. Watching Ning Tianya disappear at an extremely fast speed like a stream of light, Chu Yang also felt relieved. The rest would be everyone's business. With the little guy's reminder, Chu Yang thought of another matter. Once he and the others left, what would happen to everyone's families? Gu Duxing's sister Xiaomiao, Jimo's Huyan Aobua, Xie Danqiong's wife, Aoshian's concubines? Their brothers' families? What should they do about these? Chapter 1702. Abandon all of them? That was obviously impossible. Furthermore, no one would be willing to do that. If someone said that, Chu Yang would probably beat that person to death. Sai, let's discuss this with everyone. Chu Yang frowned. He felt a headache coming on. When you reach this level, you won't think so much. But now it's something you have to consider. Novel chapters are the fastest to update. What should we do? Once we go up, I'm afraid it won't be easy for us to come back down. Otherwise, why hasn't anyone come down for so many years? Motianji said. So we have to bring them along. But the problem is how to bring them up. They are obviously not strong enough. The difference is too big. Besides, once you get up there, you'll have to start from the very beginning. The road ahead will be filled with thorns, and every step will be filled with danger. Life and death will be more difficult than the heavens. They don't even have the ability to protect themselves. It was late at night. The group of brothers gathered together to discuss this matter. All of them racked their brains, but were unable to come up with a solution. Strength was a shortcoming. It was a problem that couldn't be solved. At this moment, everyone was envious of Dong Wushang. It seemed like this guy had it the easiest. That's why people say that simple people have good fortune. Mo Layer's YJ had also reached the limit, and even exceeded it. The two of them could fly up together without any worries. Dong Wushang frowned and thought hard. The more honest a person was, the less they would think. At the very least, he wasn't happy for ZJ at all. He was also relieved. Instead, he was feeling guilty. ZJ went up peacefully, but the brothers couldn't do it. ZJ was too much of a jerk, but what should they do? Dong Wushang's face turned black. Everyone sighed and sighed. They were all at their wits' end. Everyone looked at Mo Tianji. Mo Tianji finally panicked. Why are you all looking at me? Do you think I have a way to make them break through the void in one night? Do you really think I'm a god? Even gods don't have such great abilities. If there is no difficulty, we must do it. If there is a difficulty, we must do it. Even if there's no other way, we have to think of a way. GMO, Xie Danxiong, and Ao Xieyan didn't give up. We'll be separated by life and death this time. At the very least, we won't be able to see each other for a few decades. When we come back, it'll be really terrible. Perhaps in the end, a beautiful woman's hair will turn white. The sea will change into mulberry fields, or even death. Ah. How about none of us go up? Tan Tan tugged at ZJ's hair. You can be a king here. And you even have a beautiful woman to accompany you. Life is beautiful. That's all there is to it. The idea is beautiful, but the reality is cruel. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. We still need someone to come and pick us up. He reckoned that YJNG was being lenient. I think someone must be manipulating this to let us prepare for this. Also, the Sky Demon's descent should be a training for us. Otherwise, we will not be able to survive this ordeal. Otherwise, with the cultivation of the Dharma Supreme, he shouldn't have stayed here. Besides, the Chongtian continent has always been different from other planes. In other planes, as long as one reaches the level of Supreme Master, one can break through the void. But here, one needs to reach the peak of Supreme Master before one can ascend. Now, after we leave, perhaps this restriction will be the same as the other planes. Chu Yang frowned as he analyzed. The more he analyzed, the more his head hurt. This is all a fucking matter. God, you're not playing with us, are you? Everyone sighed together. Actually, I have a way that isn't really a way. In the tribulation space, the sword spirit said weakly. It's just that, even if we really go up, there will be a certain amount of risk. Why don't we not talk about it? Chu Yang was shocked. What kind of method is this? Tell me. You still have one, right? Tell me quickly. The sword spirit said. I remember telling you that although our tribulation space can grow heavenly treasures, it can't store living things. But now that you've obtained the 8th fragment of the tribulation sword, you can store a few living people in it. Also, with the current tribulation space, even if you store a few hundred people, you can still fit them in. But in this way, there are a few concerns that must be solved beforehand. First, they are not strong enough. The Heaven's Imperial Court is the realm of the strong, and its pressure is far greater than that of ordinary planes. The gravity is even stronger. Even the most ordinary plane is several times stronger than that of the Heaven's continent. Their bodies may not be able to bear it. Chu Yang said without hesitation, That's good, Renji. Although we don't have enough resources to make them break through the void like us, it's still a problem for us to slowly raise them to first-grade supreme martial artist. You can continue with your other concerns. The second concern is that after you go up, you may not be able to gather together. The chances of you splitting up are more than 50%. And these people are all with you, so you need to take care of them. You have to be careful. You don't have any foundation in the Heaven's Imperial Court. You won't even have the most basic place to stay. The Sword Spirit said. Master won't help you with this. Chu Yang pondered for a while and said, This isn't a big problem. The first thing to do after we go up is to solve this problem. At most, if we don't solve it, everyone will still have to wait in the tribulation space for a while. That's fine. It's better than going out and losing our lives. There's a third concern, and it's also the biggest one. Chapter 1703. Children and grandchildren had their own paths. Their parents couldn't possibly accompany them for a generation, and the elders would definitely not agree to drag them down with them. But this time, the future was unknown again. They could only wait until everyone had a firm foothold and reached a certain level of cultivation before they could bring their families up. But when would that be? A few years later? A few decades later? A few hundred years later? Chu Yang said, I think since the matter of the extraterrestrial demons this time is controlled by the higher-ups, we will definitely have a certain amount of time to prepare. But this period of time won't be too long. Let's move quickly. All right. The next morning, the Tribulation Brothers swept out of the upper three heavens like whirlwinds. They went their separate ways, rushing toward their respective homes in the three heavens. Tan also immediately led a group of experts from the Three Stars Divine Clan back to the northwest to settle all matters in the clan. Diwu Qingru, Fengyu, Han Xiaoran and the rest were even busier. They wished they could grow more heads and limbs. The entire continent had descended into chaos. How could it be easy to clean it up? Diwu Qingru actually had a few strands of white hair in just these 2 days. Wu Jueqing had nothing to worry about. He decided to stay at the place where the Dharma Supreme had died for a few more days. Even though they were once enemies, even though they were once like fire and water, Wu Jueqing still brought wine and paid his respects to this former tribulation from afar. This was a formidable person who had overturned the world and cleansed the entire continent. Chu Yang brought his son and sister and prepared to return to the Chu clan in the southeast. Everyone agreed that once they sensed that the world was about to shatter, they would immediately rush back to the law enforcement city to meet. Everyone would shatter the void together and step into the heavenly imperial court. Just as Chu Yang was about to leave, he received an unexpected surprise. Yi Shi was back. Yi Shi's return was of course no surprise. But the resurrection grass he brought back was the only good medicine to treat Yi Chuchen. When Yi Shiyu came back and learned that the Yi clan was gone, he fainted on the spot. After that he cried bitterly. He entrusted the resurrection grass to Chu Yang to bring back, while Yi Shiyu himself stayed at the Yi clan residence to keep watch. Chu Yang couldn't bear to look at the endless desolation of guarding graves all over the place. After bidding farewell to Yi Shiyu, Fengyu and the rest, Chu Yang left a message. He told Ning Tianya to bring Tai Butian straight back to the southeast when he returned. Then with Chu Luer in his arms, he traveled through the night to the southeast. Southeast, my home. I'm back. Never before. Chu Yang was so anxious to return home. After a long time, the two brothers sat across from each other. The dim light from the lantern illuminated their faces, flickering on and off. The two originally handsome faces were actually so ferocious and terrifying. Dharma Supreme. Extraterrestrial demon. Extraterrestrial demon. Yizue bit his lip hard. Streaks of red blood flowed down. He clenched his fists tightly and suddenly roared into the sky. In this lifetime, I swear that I will exterminate the extraterrestrial demon and take revenge for this blood feud. If I violate this oath, may the heavens punish me and I will be worse than a dog or a pig. A bolt of lightning flashed across the sky. Then heavy rain poured down. Yizue fell to his knees with a thud, sobbing silently. His mouth was almost gnawing into the soil. His tears flowed silently along with his blood. The next morning, the Yi clan's mansion was suddenly empty. Not only Yizue, even Yi Shiyu was nowhere to be found. It was a complete desolation. Only incense and candles were placed neatly on the ground. Within a radius of several hundred miles, the smell of wine was everywhere. The morning breeze blew, and the spirit-summoning banners rustled. It was such a huge graveyard. There was actually no one guarding the tomb. That endless desolation and devastation made the hearts of everyone who saw this scene feel heavy. From then on, no one saw Yizue in this heavenly continent anymore. No one saw Yi Shiyu again. The siblings, Chu Yang and Chu Luer, were eager to return home. They ran at a speed that was almost beyond their limits. In a short time, they had already stepped into the southeast border. This was the first time the eldest young master of the Chu clan, Tai Yang, had returned home. The commotion he caused was unprecedented in the Chu clan. Even when his father, Chu Yang, returned home previously, it wasn't as eye-catching as him. Chu Luer rushed into Flat Mountain Ridge, shouting and yelling. Before they reached home, Yang Ruolin and Chu Feiling had already jogged out to welcome them. They carried a certain baby from Chu Yang's neck and called him darling nonstop. Chu Xiongqing and Old Master Chu also came out trembling in bliss. Old Master Yang Bao and his wife also rushed out. They almost fought with Old Master Chu on the spot to see who could carry him longer. In the end, Old Mistress Yang won. Old Master Chu Xiongqing had no wife to support him, so he had no choice but to temporarily be at a disadvantage. He went up to tease his great-grandson, but was pushed aside by Old Master Yang. You old man, go to one side. You came so close. Are you trying to take advantage of my wife? Do you think you'll die of old age? Old Master Chu was speechless. With your wife's character, I don't even care if she comes to me. Am I going over because of your wife? I'm doing it for my great-grandson, okay? He's obviously my great-grandson, okay? He's a member of the Chu clan. I went through a lot of trouble to buy a new one and replace it. Then after buying the new keyboard, my wife asked the guy who gave me the keyboard if he wanted to recycle the old one. I have more than 10 at home. Then after looking at those keyboards, that guy said something that almost made me faint. He said, "These keyboards can still be used. It's normal that some of the keyboards can't be used. It's just that you put things inside. For example, fruit juice, Red Bull coffee, etc. The simplest way is to put them under the sun. These keyboards have been there for a long time. They can be used now." Then I tried them one by one. They can still be used. My God. I suddenly have 13 keyboards. 13. Fuck. Chapter 1705. Chu Yang nodded and admitted that what he said made sense. What do you mean by living a peaceful life? I'm waiting for the day when you show off your might in the heavenly imperial court and bring your parents up there to enjoy life. Yang Ruolan looked at her son gently and said, "But for now, your father and I won't follow you up there. Firstly, we're not strong enough. Secondly, we're old now and don't have so much energy. It's good to live a peaceful life." Chu Yang sighed. "Also, this little guy can't follow you up there. I want to watch him grow up. To make up for my regret of not being able to watch his father grow up." Yang Ruolan looked at her grandson tenderly. Chu Yang was speechless. "Besides, it's useless for you to stay by my side if you don't go up there now. You're far inferior to my son Cutie. I think even you back then were not as good as my son Cutie." Yang Ruolan's words hit Chu Yang so hard that he rolled his eyes. She forgot about her son when she had a grandson. "Oh yes, leave me more of your life-prolonging things. If I don't go up there, I won't be able to go up there. But it's good to live a few hundred more years. Maybe I can wait until you show off your might and return to the heavenly imperial court. How can my son be ordinary?" Chu Yang smiled mischievously and said, "There's no need to doubt this point. As long as my strength reaches a certain level, I can sneak down and stay for a few days. After I establish my kingdom, I'll bring my parents up there to play. If I feel that it's good up there, I'll stay there. If I miss home, I'll come home. That day won't be too far away." Yang Ruolan's eyes lit up and said, "Then you have to work hard. I'm counting on you, your father, and I just have to live carefully. My son is so promising. It's meaningless for us to wander in the martial world. We can only work hard to avoid any risks and try to live as long as possible. I want to see your glory one after another." Chu Yang nodded solemnly. Yang Ruolan's words expressed the thoughts of all parents in the world. When they were young, they had to fight and fight. It was just for the glory and splendor of their lives, and to leave something for their grandchildren. But when they were old and their children and grandchildren were very capable, they had to suppress their ambitions. It was just to let their children wander outside feel at ease. They could achieve great things with peace of mind. This was the greatest and best support for their children. Night fell. Chu Yang had already returned to his room to sleep. Yang Ruolan was hugging her grandson. She looked at the little fellow's pink face as he slept soundly. Tonight, she was destined to have a sleepless night. The lights were already out. Throughout the night, she could only hear Chu Failing tossing and turning restlessly beside her, while Yang Ruolan forcefully suppressed a long sigh. "I am about to go on a long journey. How could it be false? Haha, I heard that when third brother came back and reported this matter, he was scolded by Steward Liang. Then Steward Liang was beaten up by General Wu. I heard that he was bedridden for half a year. But the most unlucky one is still General Wu. When General Wu wanted to go down and find a chance to restore the purple cloud ribbon robe, he was directly grounded by General Liu. I heard that the crime was actually kicking his own dog. This is really strange. That's right, General Wu hasn't been released yet. And the matter of the purple cloud ribbon robe being damaged was left unsettled. In the end, the one who suffered the least loss was third brother. But after hearing about this, third brother didn't even dare to fart. He was so scared that his face turned green. Ha ha ha. But there must be something fishy about this. Otherwise, so many people wouldn't be so unlucky because of what happened back then. Nonsense. If there's nothing fishy, I'm your son. Didn't you see that after that incident, we've been idle all this time? We don't even need to restore the balance in the lower realm. But this time, the task of breaking through the void. What should we do? What else can we do? There's no order from above for us to take action. Do you dare to take action? Cough. It's Sun who dares to take action. Of course, we can't take action without permission. Let's report it, and let the superiors deal with it. Are you stupid? Even if you want to die, don't drag us down with you. It's our responsibility to report it. If you ask me, who should be responsible for it? Since third brother is in charge of that area, it's naturally better for him to report it himself. We don't want to get into trouble and come back. General Wu kicked his own dog and was grounded for several months. If we little people let out a fart at such a critical moment, won't our entire family be executed? It must have something to do with the guy who broke through the void this time. There's no doubt about that. Damn it, when those guys come up, I'd like to see what kind of outstanding people they are. They're torturing us. Right, where's third brother? Damn it, tell him to report it. After third brother heard about this, he was so scared that he went to the toilet. He hasn't come out yet. Ha ha ha, he likes to go to the toilet when he's nervous. He even fell sick. After a long time, a voice suddenly rang out. Envoy received the decree. Suddenly, the few people in the room were dumbfounded. They were so shocked that they almost fainted. All of them stared at each other, unable to believe their ears. Receive the decree. What decree? Nonsense, this was the Eastern Royal Heaven. Other than the Eastern Royal Token, what else could be called a decree? But the problem was that the few of them seemed to be just insignificant guides. Many years before this, not to mention personally receiving the Eastern Emperor's decree, they had not even seen half a person who was qualified to receive the decree. And now they were actually receiving the decree directly? Wasn't this really going to scare them to the point of pissing their pants? Earlier, why didn't they accompany third brother to the toilet? Now they wouldn't. At the next moment, the few of them rushed out and knelt on the ground while trembling. The ranks of these brothers were really too low. It seemed that they didn't even know the basic etiquette of receiving a decree. They only knew how to kowtow. Little officials received the decree, t. Don't misunderstand, they weren't being arrogant. Instead, they were so scared that their teeth were chattering. The messenger snorted but didn't blame him. He simply unfolded the Donghuang order and said loudly, His Majesty the Donghuang order. 3 months later, go to the Chongtian continent to bring the broken ones to Heaven Imperial Court. Based on the number of people, each envoy can only bring one person. All the broken ones will be separated and scattered to the various realms of the Heaven Imperial Court. They can't communicate with each other and can't go against each other. This Donghuang token seemed to be extremely strange. The Great Eastern Royal Emperor was actually concerned about people who had just ascended. He even specially made detailed plans and arrangements. Was this old man so free? After the envoy finished his announcement, he left the Eastern Royal token behind and left as if his butt was on fire. Even after the envoy left for a long time, the envoys still hadn't recovered from their shock. What the heck? Did I hear wrongly just now? Me too. How could? The envoys gathered in front of the Eastern Royal token and read it word by word. After reading it, they were even more confused. What the hell was going on? What was going on? His Majesty definitely wouldn't be so free. The only explanation is, these people are very important. The leader of the envoys looked solemn, and there was even fear in his eyes. Brothers, I'm afraid we've taken on a big job this time. Today is the birthday of the 2 leaders. Satan Yao and White Tiger God of War birthdays. No matter where these people came from, it was absolutely right to serve them well. Once they respectfully welcomed them and sent them off as if they were serving their masters, there would be nothing left for them to do. Otherwise, there would be no end of trouble. Before everyone could regain their senses, they saw a man in green robes coming from afar. With a schwa sound, he arrived in front of them. I am the Prime Minister's Residence's Divine Sword Consul. The Prime Minister wants me to ask if someone in the heaven has broken through? Prime Minister. The few envoys almost fainted. Not only the monarch, even the Prime Minister sent someone over? The Prime Minister was the most powerful person in the entire Eastern Royal Heavens after the monarch. The monarch usually didn't care about worldly affairs, but the Prime Minister was the #1 person in charge of the entire situation. Over the years, millions of people had been killed in the Eastern Royal Heavens. Which one of them wasn't under the orders of the Prime Minister? The Prime Minister wouldn't even bat an eyelid if the few of them were killed. But he actually personally sent someone to ask. And the person he sent was actually one of the legendary 8 consul generals, the Divine Sword Consul. Oh my god. The Prime Minister has ordered that if any one of you leaks this out, you guys will be blessed. If something goes wrong, your ancestors will be blessed. The green-clothed man said a few words in a cold voice, and then floated away. A few of the emissaries almost burst into tears. Blessed if it's leaked out. What blessed? This sentence was definitely sarcastic. It could really scare them away. Who can tell us? Who are these people who have broken through the void? Are they the monarch's illegitimate children? Or are they the Prime Minister's pearls in the sea? This battle formation was simply too frightening. Chu Yang and the others stayed in the Heaven continent peacefully, enjoying the rarest and most peaceful time of their lives. On the 3rd day, Ning Tianya finally appeared in the southeast flat mountain ridge with Tai Butian, who was travel-worn. Of course, the Minister of Internal Affairs, Feng Qiliang, accompanied them along the way. Minister Feng's future was in Chu Yang's hands. It could be said that his lifetime of happiness and sexual bliss were all in Minister Chu's hands. Now that Chu Yang was about to break through, Tai Butian also intended to take this opportunity. He wanted Chu Yang to help him. After all, such a top expert couldn't always be a eunuch, right? The moment he saw the gate of the Chu clan, Tai Butian thought about how he was about to meet Chu Yang and his family. He couldn't help but blush. He was so embarrassed that it was hard to describe. Chu Yang's other family members were fine. But Chu Yang's mother, the only Chu clan member he was familiar with, was his senior sister. How was he going to face this? Chapter 1707. Ning Tianya and Feng Qiliang looked at Tai Butian together, obviously letting her make the decision. Tai Butian's pretty face instantly turned as red as a persimmon in late autumn, as red as it could get. If that's the case, I'll have to trouble the 3 of you to inform. Tai Butian's face was red as she almost stammered. Tai Butian of the lower 3 heavens. This requests an audience, requests an audience. After stammering for a long time, she still couldn't say who she was requesting an audience with. She was already so embarrassed that she couldn't show her face. The 3 guards looked at each other. How could anyone who could guard the door be a fool? They thought to themselves, which master's romantic debt has come knocking on our door? He's really lucky with women. Since the other party had already introduced herself, they nodded and said, "If that's the case, please wait a moment." Immediately, a person went in to report. Of course, they didn't know who exactly this Tai Butian was. They also didn't know what the 3 words Tai Butian meant in the lower 3 heavens and here. But the next moment they knew. They knew completely. The Chu clan's mansion suddenly erupted. Then Chu Feiling, first Madame Yang Ruolin, and first young master Chu Yang almost ran out. Then, they saw first young master Chu Yang dashing out like a flash of light. The next moment, he held this indescribably beautiful woman in his arms. "You're here, you're finally here." Chu Yang hugged the beauty tightly. Let go of me. What have I become?" Tai Butian was embarrassed and anxious as she struggled with all her might. That original graceful bearing of a sovereign had long flown to God knows where. It was unknown whether it was beyond the clouds or somewhere else. Anyway, it was definitely very far away. Chu Yang laughed and let go of the beauty, facing Chu Feiling and Yang Ruolin. These 2 people whom she was destined to meet, but was most afraid of meeting. Tai Butian was even more embarrassed and embarrassed. She couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. This, how should I address them? This matter was truly too difficult to handle. Chu Feiling and Yang Ruolin were already prepared. Seeing Tai Butian's embarrassed look, the 2 of them also felt a little strange and expectant as they looked at her with an amused expression. Chu Yang rubbed his nose and laughed. Then, he feigned ignorance and said, "Father, Mother, let me introduce you. You definitely haven't met her before. This is Tai Yang's mother, Cough cough. She is the emperor of the Iron Cloud Empire of the lower three heavens cough cough. And also your daughter-in-law. She secretly added another word. One of them. Tai Butian's pretty face turned even redder. Seeing that there was no way she could avoid this, she could only grit her teeth and take 3 steps forward. Then, she knelt down gracefully and said in a voice as soft as a mosquito's buzz, "Daughter-in-law Butian greets father-in-law and mother-in-law." As he spoke he kowtowed. This bow was necessary, no matter how familiar they were in the past. However, it involved the important matter of recognizing one's ancestors. That was something that could not be done carelessly. No matter how many misgivings Tai Butian had in her heart, she had already arrived at the Chu clan. But it was no longer up to her. Other than father-in-law and mother-in-law, there was no other way to address them. If he still called her senior sister, then the entire Chu clan would become the biggest joke in the heavenly layer. Therefore, this meeting had really forced Tai Butian into a corner. With Dan Air here, Tai Butian had no choice but to come and give in. "Oh my, get up, get up." Chu Feiling said hurriedly. Yang Rulan stepped forward and helped Tai Butian up. She pulled her into her arms and couldn't stop grinning. She whispered into Tai Butian's ear. "Little girl, you were so stubborn back then." Humph humph. Tai Butian's face turned even redder. They were originally senior and junior sisters, so they were naturally very familiar with each other. However, this was the first time they met openly after changing identities. She recalled how she had been stubborn back then, and said that she wouldn't acknowledge Chu Yang. And the audience at that time was her senior sister, mother-in-law in front of her now. Yang Rulan smiled warmly and hugged Tai Butian as they walked into the house. Since she was her junior, and now her daughter-in-law, how could Yang Rulan bear to let Tai Butian continue to be embarrassed? A red carpet was laid out in front of the main entrance of the house. On the red carpet, there was a large fire basin with flames burning fiercely. Chu Yang came up and whispered to Tai Butian, "Jump over." Tai Butian was stunned. Seeing that everyone was smiling and looking at her, she had no choice but to jump over. Instantly, there was applause all around. She saw that Chu Yang had also jumped over with her. She couldn't help but feel puzzled. Was this worthy of applause? It was just a small fire basin. Besides, even if it was a peerless lightness technique, what was there to praise in a martial arts clan like the Chu clan? "This is called jumping over a fire pit." Chu Yang whispered into her ear. "It's a custom here. It means that coming to my house is equivalent to jumping out of a fire pit. From now on, everything will be smooth sailing. Of course, it also means that you're a member of my family." Realization dawned on Tai Butian. She thought to herself, so being the emperor of the lower 3 heavens is a fire pit. Being the emperor is jumping into a fire pit. This is really strange. Could it be that living in the world, hundreds of millions of people are looking forward to jumping into the fire pit every moment?